Lech Lecha is a leap of faith. In this week's Torah reading, we find God's great call to Abraham and Sarah, Lech Lecha. Go forth from your land and your birthplace and your family's house to the land that I will show you. For I will make for you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great. So be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And through you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Sometimes, in difficult times, you just have to take a leap of faith, like Abraham and Sarah did here in Lech Lecha. Abraham and Sarah left home and land and family for the sake of their faith and for the promise of their prosperity. Like so many generations of our ancestors, they set forth on a perilous journey in search of a land of promise. And were it not for their faith and courage in answering that call, the history of the world, the history of our people, our own history, would be unalterably changed. We are the children of that blessing. And like Abraham and Sarah and the generations of our ancestors who carried us to this day, we too must answer God's call. And we too are called to blessing. There are, I'm sure, a myriad ways to answer that call. The entire Torah, at its essence, is a roadmap for that journey. But here, at the beginning of our very first journey as a people and a faith, there's a simple beginning for us as well. Be a blessing, so that through you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. From our very beginnings as a people, we are called to live lives of blessing for ourselves, for our families, and for all the people of the earth. 1,000 years after this Torah portion, the prophet Micah would come to echo these very words. In Micah's words, "It has been told you what is good and what God requires of you, simply to do justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Be a blessing. Live lives of justice, mercy, and faith. This is God's call for us for all time." The prophet Jeremiah, too, would deliver God's call to live lives of blessing for our sake and for the sake of our communities. In Jeremiah's words, God calls us to seek the welfare of the city which I have sent you, and pray to God on its behalf, for in its welfare shall you fare well. The ways we can do this have changed throughout the ages and until today, but the value of civic involvement, making a difference, for blessing and not for curse, for ourselves and for all the people of the lands in which we live, this is our eternal calling. This is the promise of Lech Lecha. Supreme Court Justice Louie D. Brandeis placed this calling in broadly democratic terms when he reflected on his own life and his own life's work as the people's lawyer, an advocate for economic justice and political reform. Brandeis said, "What I have desired to do is to make the people realize that the most important office, and the one which all of us can and should fill, is that of private citizen. The duties of the office of private citizen cannot, under a Republican form of government, be neglected without serious injury to the public." Brandeis, who was a more secular Jew, still carried the values of our people in his heart and lived them through his life, expanding upon them to become more universal and democratic values for all the citizens of the land. Give of yourself for the sake of your community. Be a blessing, and through you, all of us will be blessed. And this universal value is not just an ideal of the ancient prophets or the progressive voices of our faith in the modern day, our modern prophets. There's a story about Chazon Ish, an ultra-Orthodox rabbi and founder of the Haredi movement from the early days of the State of Israel. The rabbi, who barely recognized the existence of the State of Israel, ran into a congregant on election day. He asked the man if he'd voted yet, and the man admitted that he had not. The Chazon Ish asked him why, and the man said because he couldn't afford the poll tax. It cost 3 Israeli pounds in those days just to vote. The rabbi told him to sell his tefillin, the leather straps and boxes that he would wrap around his arms and across his forehead every morning while he was praying. Wearing the tefillin, the rabbi argued, is a mitzvah, but voting is a mitzvah as well. Tefillin can be borrowed, he said, but your vote cannot. Go vote. Voting is the first of our civic responsibilities. And though I may be preaching to the choir, given the phenomenally high voting rates within the Jewish community, still in all, if you have not yet voted, Lech Lecha, go vote. And if you have voted, but you're wondering if your one vote will truly make a difference, or if you're worrying about the impact of even all of our votes towards the betterment of our lives and the life of our community in which we live, let me just say that sometimes, in difficult times, we need to recognize, too, that the very act of voting is a leap of faith. Democracy itself is a leap of faith. Faith in the values we all have a stake in building for a better world, a world of justice and peace for us all. Lech Lecha is a leap of faith. Abraham and Sarah are called to believe in something they can only hope to be true, and so are we. That despite all that we have seen in our lives, still in all, we can begin again anew. Voting is a leap of faith. Lech Lecha. Go forth. Be a blessing. Go vote. Shabbat Shalom.